Alright, so I figured it was finally about time that we redid this video, and I got a couple pages of notes here, including a couple complaints from the first version of this video. So it's going to be Blackstone versus Camp Chef with updated Blackstone equipment this time, coming up right now. Okay, welcome back everybody once again. I really appreciate all your support. It's a little bit of a windy day. I had some lighting issues. I had to drag a big steel light out here for this video so you could kind of see some stuff. So we're gonna go through this as quickly as we can, but I do have a lot of stuff, so settle in because I like to be detailed when I do review videos, okay? I did this video, by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do it. I'd really appreciate it. I did this video a couple years ago, and at the time I used my original Blackstone griddle, which was their original model, and my Camp Chef was a little new to me. I had it for a couple months. Now, you know, I've had the Camp Chef for probably 2 years, and I've had this model Blackstone. This is the one with the air fryer for about a year. And I realize it's not complete apples to apples because the air fryer is, you know, a little bit different than traditional for an outdoor griddle. But really, we're only going to focus on the griddle part of this. The Camp Chef obviously is just the Camp Chef. It's the griddle, and it does have a grilling function, which I'm going to get to. So I went through the pinned comment on the other video, and I looked at a couple things. One of the big things that people talked about was in that video, I didn't address the price difference. And the reason why I didn't is because prices vary. And at that time, I think the Camp Chef was $3.99, and the Blackstone, at least the model that I had, was $2.99. But I knew Blackstone had some new models coming out, and I thought at the time Camp Chef was going to be lowering their price. Ended up not being the case. And now, at this particular time, I'm just going to say this is November 2021, almost close to Thanksgiving, my favorite time of year. I get to cook turkeys. But my point of this is that it's been a while, and the world is in a little bit different shape than it was when I did that first video. So now things are harder to get, they take longer to get, and they're more expensive. So I looked it up, and I'm just going to tell you right now, this model Blackstone with the air fryers is currently on Walmart's website for $592. Now I know that was one of the more expensive ones when it came out, so that's kind of held its value. I don't think it's readily available in a lot of places now because Blackstone's got a ton of new models. The other thing I forgot to mention in my initial video was that the Camp Chef had claimed that they had a pre-seasoned griddle top. And while it was pre-seasoned, it wasn't really pre-seasoned. So I did have to go ahead and go through a seasoning process on that. And the reason why I found out is because I just tested it as is, and I ended up having some burgers stick when I did smash burgers. They didn't stick like to make a big mess, but I could tell it wasn't really fully seasoned. So I did what I always do. I cooked a pound of bacon on it. I let some of that season that griddle top. I cleaned it up good, and I was good to go after that. I really never had any more issues. So big part of this, if you get the Camp Chef, remember, even though they say it is pre-seasoned, go through your seasoning process and make sure that you do it the right way so that when you do cook on it for that first time, you don't have any food sticking. Big thing that you need to know. Okay, so now let's get into some details. I want to disclose first and foremost that both of these cookers were sent to me as promo items. So the Blackstone, this is the only free product I've ever gotten from Blackstone. And I believe they actually reached out to me, but I don't remember. It's a couple years ago. And they did send me this product. I did assemble it. It went quite well. There was a couple snafus in the instruction manual, but that goes for the Camp Chef too. That was also very easy assembly, but it had a couple little snafus, and part of that is I'm not an expert putter together of things, so I really sometimes screw stuff up when I don't have to, or when most other people wouldn't, would be a better way to put it. So both of these assemble very well, and the average person is going to be able to take care of that with no issues. If you're like me and you're a little bit, you know, mechanically challenged, I'll put it, you may spend a little bit more time on it, but you'll get through it. But they're both on a level playing field because they were both sent to me as promotional items. I didn't pay a dime for either one, and I need to let you guys know that up front. Now, I have used both of these a ton over the last couple years. Flat top cooking is one of my favorite things to do, and I've gotten a lot of cooks in on this Blackstone since I got it. To be honest, I haven't used this Camp Chef in probably about a year, and the griddle top stayed in really good shape. I'm going to show you that in a second, but I was amazed. When I decided to redo this video a couple weeks ago and I started my prep, I was dreading taking this cover off this Camp Chef. I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to find under there. And the last time I cooked on it, which was over a year ago, I just gave it my normal good cleaning and seasoning, and it stayed in really good shape. And I did not prep that griddle top for this video. So what you see right now is exactly how it looks. I did clean the exteriors of both of these a bit just to make them look a little bit better on camera, but they've had a lot of use. So if you see any little battle scars here, please know that I did clean it and they've gotten a lot of use, but they've both held up very, very well. Now both of these have griddle covers. So for the Blackstone, this came with it. This is attached to the cooker top and you can pretty much open and close it. It serves for me as a really good splash guard more than anything. I know some people do close the lid to like steam the food if they're trying to melt cheese on burgers or whatever. I don't do that because I don't want things to gather underneath that hood and then drip down on my porch, because I keep these on my porch outside. But I know some people use it that way. I'm not sure if they're supposed to or not, but just pointing that out. Now in the Camp Chef, this actually has a hard cover that doesn't come with it. I got this from my buddy Ron over at Backyard Life Gear, and it hangs off the back here. The reason why he designed it that way is because this serves as a splash guard for when you're cooking on it. It's also a nice way to not have to find a place to put this when you're using it. But you could see how nice it kept my griddle top for over a year of not being used. And it pops back up on here real easy. I'm going to show you that right now just so you know how it looks when it's sitting. And there's cars and trucks driving around out here on the street, so if there's any background noise, I apologize. This is going to be noisy. I may tame the audio when I put this top on. So this right here is what it looks like when the top is on, and it really protects this top very well. Now this is really not a plug for this cover or for Ron, but I will have a link to it down there if you want to check it out if you have the Camp Chef. I definitely recommend getting a hardcover, and this is the one I've used. It's done a wonderful job. Now both of these cookers have collapsible side shelves. The Blackstone also has tool hangers on it, and these collapse very easily simply by pulling up and then letting it down, and then you can lock it into place. Now on the Camp Chef specifically, the cover that Camp Chef makes that they'll sell you, or they sent it to me but you can buy it, it doesn't fit on here with these shelves expanded. So you do have to fold them down in order to put that cover on. Now, normally that wouldn't be a big deal, but I want to show you a really, really important thing that I pointed out in my first video that still to this day, I wish they would redesign and change, and maybe someday they will. Maybe they're already working on it. Actually, I got an email from Camp Chef after I put out that first video, and they said that I made a really good point, and that was something they were going to put forth to their engineering department. But let me show you what I'm talking about. So the way the grease system works here is the grease will come into the trough, go down through this hole, and get into this cup. So now when I want to fold this shelf up to put my cover on, if I'm done, I have to take this off, and that exposes this. If there's any residual grease on the cooker that you didn't pick up, it's going to drip down. So you may want to just end up storing this with a tarp or something else, because if you're like me and you're putting this on your porch, you don't want grease to get down on your porch. And I love the way this system works. I've never had a drop of grease get out of here when I'm cooking, but I have had issues when I've lowered down the shelf and covered it up. And what I do to combat that is I'll put a little piece of paper towel and I'll lodge it into this hole, and that gives me the ability to kind of prevent that grease from going down. But it would be really nice if they could just find a way to fix that and maybe redesign it. Now both of these cookers have wheels. The Blackstone has 4 wheels. The Camp Chef has 2 wheels. On the other side of the Camp Chef, there's just some leveling screws there. So that gives you the ability to go ahead and level this off so that you can maintain the proper grease flow here through the trough. So not 4 wheels, but that leveling system does help. It keeps you from having to shim, which some people are going to have that issue, whether it's on a deck or on a patio. So that is kind of cool, and I did use that to my advantage with this here on my porch. So just to go over it again, 4 wheels on the Blackstone, 2 wheels on the Camp Chef. Wheels are plenty good quality. I've never had a problem rolling either of these around my porch when I've needed to. So don't worry about that. They both have really good quality casters. And like I mentioned, the Blackstone has so many new models. There's so many I don't even know. You know, you're going to have to go shopping and kind of look and see what fits you. But in general, their quality has gotten a lot better than it was on their original cooker. And, you know, I don't fault them for that first one having flaws. It's the first attempt that they took at it, and it was, by and large, a great cooker. The grease dripping issue was a big deal. It wasn't quite sturdy enough for my taste, but the new ones are just, they're incredible. So they've come a long way, and I give them props for that. The Camp Chef has just been great from the word go. I've never really had any issues with it, and I really enjoy using it. In general, one thing I'll just mention right now, the Camp Chef does run a little bit hotter because you've got 4 burners on both of these cookers underneath these griddle tops, and they're stainless steel on both, so they're all 4 stainless steel burners. Want to mention that. But the Camp Chef has a smaller cooktop, and we're going to measure those shortly, and I'll tell you exactly how big each one is, length and width. But because you've got 4 burners on a smaller cooktop, the cooktop runs a little hotter, and that will, I mean, I have to say I have gotten a little bit better sear action on the Camp Chef than I have on my Blackstone, but that's just because it runs hotter. Is it a huge difference? No, it isn't. And honestly, I don't think it should be counted as enough of a thing for you to make a decision based on that, because you're going to get a heck of a sear on that Blackstone too. But I want to let you know that it does run hotter. And one of the things that is a negative about it running hotter is that the Camp Chef has 2 shelves. One of them is right here, which is within about a foot of the hot area of the cooker. And I've had people tell me that if they put things on that shelf, they'll get super hot. You know, like if you put anything on there and you go to touch it after you're cooking, you're gonna know it was under some heat. I don't think it makes that shelf completely unusable, but it is something to keep in mind. So just know that, because I've heard it from others. I haven't really tested that, but so many people have told me that I've got to believe there's truth to it. Now, I did show you the grease system here on the Camp Chef. The one on the Blackstone, I haven't cleaned it, and I left it that way so that you could kind of see how it flows into that foil cup, which, by the way, that's a steel hanging cup that's on the back. They sell these foil trays that fit in there that make cleanup really easy. And if you don't have those, I'll put a link down in the description for that so you can pick some up, because it makes cleaning that thing out super easy. So I know it's a little disgusting to look at right now, but I wanted to show you how it actually works. You can kind of see how it flows. And I've never had a problem with grease dripping back there. So props to Blackstone for getting that fixed. Biggest problem for me is that it's in the back, and because I have this sort of backed close to the end of the porch here, not so close that it's a fire hazard, but close enough that I kind of have to slide it out a little bit to get back there to clean it. But that's only every month or two, so not that big of a deal. But the most important thing is I have no drippage, so that's a big deal, and that's a big thing that I had a problem with on the original Blackstone. So knowing that that's fixed really puts me at ease, and my wife, because she hated when I had any kind of drippage on the porch from cooking. So for those of you out there that are worried about that, just know that these both do a really good job at keeping the grease where the grease is supposed to be. Now, the control areas of these are very sleek. The Blackstone especially has made really big improvements on how sleek that area is. Just to talk a little bit about the igniters, the Blackstone has an electronic ignition, so you'll pretty much turn the gas on and you'll hit that button where there's a battery stored behind it to ignite the burners. On the original Blackstone, I did have an issue with that. Waiting a couple days and trying a couple different batteries, and eventually it started working again. This one here I have not had any issues with, so it's been 100% good to go. And maybe one day I will have problems with the electronic igniter, but it hasn't happened yet. So I have to give it 100% rating at this point. Now, the Camp Chef's a little bit different. The Camp Chef has sort of an old stove type igniting system. And I kind of prefer that, just to be honest, because I feel like it's a more foolproof way of using it. So with that, you just kind of turn the knob and you'll feel the click and the ignition. And that's exactly how this thing ignites. It's sort of like an old stove, an old camp stove, if you will. So it's not relying on electronic ignition. And although the Blackstone's never given me an issue, I kind of prefer having the ability to just go ahead and use that old style ignition. It's just my preference. You might be different, but I want you to know the difference. Now, speaking of ignition and burners, both of these have independently controlled burners or cooking zones. So you can turn on burners 1 and 3 or 2 and 4 or 2 and 3 on either one of these and they'll work independently. I believe it was the original Blackstone that they had to work in sequence. So you couldn't turn on number 3 without having number 2 on, and 2 wouldn't work without 1. I think it was just the way the gas was wired or piped. And I'm not even sure that I'm right on that, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So with these newer models, you get that independent ability to have specific burners on for whatever it is that you're doing when you're cooking. So that's something else that I think is pretty important for people to know. Now the Camp Chef does have the ability to remove that griddle top and put down griddle grates that come with it, and you can actually use this as a gas grill. I never have, because I worry that grease is going to get down in that, in that burner area, and it's going to end up on my porch. But for some folks that are going to have this on a patio or whatever the case may be, this could actually be something that you may get use out of. So keep that in mind. And I'm not taking anything away from the Blackstone by saying that, because I'm pretty sure some of these newer Blackstone models, they've come a long way. I'm pretty sure some of them do offer similar features. So make sure you do your homework on the different models that are available, and if something like that's important to you, I'm sure you can find what you're looking for. Now, one thing that I have noticed a lot of discussion on since the Blackstone was brand new, even on the original model, is the wind issue, where wind can come around the sides of the griddle if you store this in a place where wind can hit it, and it'll actually blow those burners out. And people have lots of different mods that they do to kind of cover the edges of the griddle to keep the wind from getting in there. And even on this newer model, there's a pretty large gap between the griddle top and the base, so that allows wind to get in there. Now maybe some of the newer models that I haven't seen may have done something to cure this, but still, in this regard, from these two specific cookers, the Camp Chef has the advantage because it's built up a little bit more. There's more steel coming up around that area to block wind. And for what it's worth, that is something to consider. But there are mods and different things that you can do on the Blackstone to keep that from being an issue. There's these paint scrapers that I see people purchase, and they just hang them off the sides of the griddle. I think people get them at the dollar store, and it keeps the wind from penetrating under there and blowing out those burners. So it is something that I did want to address. And again, some of those newer models of Blackstone, just to be fair, maybe they cured that, I'm not sure. But this is a pretty new model, and I still have a pretty large gap in there around those edges. So I do want to point that out. Make sure you take that into consideration if you're going to be using this in a windy place. Now, I already know these measurements, but I'm going to do this on camera with you just to show you exactly how large these griddle tops are in comparison. So the Blackstone from front to back gives you about 22 inches. One thing that I really like about this is, like on the original Blackstone, you had that grease trough here in the front, and that stole some cooking space from you, about an inch. So now, with this being able to come all the way to the end here and then butt up, you can see that you get to take advantage of all that space. And of course, this is 36 wide, but I'll show you. This is the 36-inch model, so you have 36. Now, one thing I want to mention, and I'm not 100% sure if it's all these new models or with Blackstone or if it's just this air fryer model, but the cooking height on this is really comfortable to me. And not to say that the Camp Chef isn't, but this is higher, and I just find myself feeling a lot more comfortable cooking on this height cooker. So I'm going to measure that for you now so you know how tall it is, and maybe you can compare. And I'm 5'11". I'm not an incredibly tall person. I'm wide. I'm not tall. So even for me at 5'11", this really is a nice, comfortable cooking height. Let me show you exactly how tall it is. So it's about 37.5 inches to this griddle top. 37 to 37.5. Very, very comfortable cooking height. Now let's take some measurements on the Camp Chef. So here you can see the Camp Chef. The cooking area stops around 19 inches. It does go all the way to just over 20.5, but a large part of that here is this grease trough, so that's not really area that you can use to cook on. Width-wise, so this is about 31.5 inches. So again, this is a smaller cooktop. Cooking height is about 35.5 inches. So that's about 2 inches difference from the Blackstone. And again, that's the air fryer model over there, so I'm not sure if, you just buy the new Pro model that it's going to be that height, but that's a real comfortable cooking height, and I want to make a big deal out of it because it's a big deal to me. So, pay attention to that, because when you're out here cooking on griddles, you're sort of like, it's non-stop action. It's not like smoking a brisket, or, you know, which I have a lot of that stuff on my channel, where you're just going to sit back and crack open a beer and maybe light a cigar and enjoy it. You know, when you're cooking on this, it's pretty much intense action, and it's really cool. But you want to be comfortable, so, you know, keep that cooking height in mind, especially if you're a taller individual. Now, the Camp Chef does have a cool little bottle opener, so for what it's worth, nice little feature. I tend to think it's pretty cool, and I just want to mention it. And I didn't talk much about the air fryer and the air fryer model, because again, this is not really a video where we're focusing on that. So I do have a full review video on this specific cooker. I'll link you to it up here. I'll put a link down in the description. If you want more information specifically on this Blackstone with air fryer, or the air fryer itself, or whatever it is, you know, you can watch that video. I just want to keep this more or less about Blackstone Camp Chef and the griddles specifically. So now it's time for me to kind of go through, summarize this, and give you some personal opinion, which I've already expressed some during this video, but I'll do this in a bit of a summary. And I will have a pinned comment below this video that you can use to, you know, address things that I forgot, because I'm just one person. Maybe I forgot to talk about something. Put it down there. We can discuss it in the pinned comment. And I'll add to that too if there's things I know I forgot. I mean, I made a long list of stuff, but if there's things I forgot, let's talk about them down there in the pinned comment. Don't attack me, because I'm just one person and I'm doing my best. Dragging all this equipment out here and lights and cleaning these things, you know, it's fun, I won't lie, but it's work too. So give me a break. Just put it down in the pinned comment and we'll go through it. Now let's talk about what I'm thinking in terms of both of these cookers and these brands. I want to be very honest and forthcoming with you. I think in my first video, I really leaned towards Camp Chef, and I did because at the time I was comparing it to the original Blackstone. I hadn't had any experience with the newer Blackstone models, and there was a lot of reasons why I kind of leaned towards Camp Chef. But in summary for that video, and it kind of goes along with this, you know, it really comes down to real estate. The Blackstone has more real estate. It has a bigger cooktop, this 36-inch model. Now, the Camp Chef does have a much larger griddle. I think it's a 5 or a 6 burner. I think it's called the FTG 900. I've never used it, I've never seen it, but that's for like really cooking for a ton of people. You know, for your average household, this 600 model and the 36-inch models for Blackstone are going to be the ones that you're probably going to compare mostly. So the Blackstone has more real estate, all right? And at the time, the first video, I really liked Camp Chef's quality better. Now, I honestly think that they've become very, very even in terms of quality. Blackstone has made leaps and bounds with the design, the different cookers, all the engineering, the sturdiness of the cookers. The food has always been great on both of these. And as I mentioned, Camp Chef runs a little hotter. For what it's worth, you're going to maybe get a little bit better sear, but I wouldn't want you to buy that just based on that one thing alone. So, you know, weigh a lot of options, because you get a heck of a sear on the Blackstone too. And I have cooked almost anything you can imagine on both of these cookers. I'll overlay some footage now, but fajitas, burgers, all different kinds of sandwiches, different kinds of creative stuff, and they both put off really good flavor. I mean, you can just cook vegetables on either one of these, just onions and peppers, and they taste a million times better than they do inside in a frying pan. And that comes from both of these cooktops. So I don't think one's going to give you better flavor than the other. I think they're both outstanding, but I can tell you for sure that the Blackstone has more space. And now I feel like with the quality that Blackstone has risen, you know, they are equally as good as this Camp Chef, at least on this model here that I'm comparing it to. So perhaps other models may not be as sturdy or good a quality, but it really does appear that they are, and I see a lot of other people saying that as well. So there's my difference on the cookers. Let's talk a little bit about the companies. And I did this in my last video. This will be my last bit for this video. But you know, if I have to pick a company, and for me it's different because I'm a creator, I make videos, and so I have some interaction with both of these companies on a different level than the average consumer may have. And because of that, you know, my opinion may be a little different than yours as a direct consumer. But what I will say is Camp Chef has been great to me. They have treated me like family since the very first time I had contact with them. And it's not just because they send me things. I mean, anytime I've had an issue, I can email them. I get an immediate response. I've got a direct contact there. He takes really good care of me. And you know, it's no secret, if you've watched my channel in the last year, I've lost my mom, I've lost my dad. Camp Chef sends flowers, you know, they don't even, it's not like I told anyone about it, but they're so close to me that they know what's going on in my life, and they're there for me. And I really, really appreciate that, because I don't get that treatment from many companies. Now, there have been others that have reached out to me during tough times, and I've had a number of those in the past year, but there's a big difference between Camp Chef and Blackstone in that regard. So from a creator's perspective, you know, Blackstone, they don't even really deal directly with creators anymore. There might be a few that they favor and they talk to directly, but for the most part, they don't. They cut off their affiliate program. So, you know, that was a little bit of a dent, because I did sell some griddles on the affiliate program. Now, you know, I can't do that anymore. So they don't really have a contact for me to talk to directly, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they'll reach out to me in this video. I don't know. It really doesn't matter to me either way. I love their products, and that at the end of the day is really all that matters to me. But from a creator's perspective, I'm going to tell you up front that Camp Chef, they're just a better company for me as a creator. If I want to bring content to you and there's things I want to show you, Camp Chef helps facilitate that. Blackstone, they're just basically worried about Walmart. So, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing. They sell a ton of cookers, and by all accounts, I think they're a good company. But just talking from my perspective, there's a difference with that. So as far as the cookers go, I could take either one of these and I'm going to be a happy guy. And I think you're going to be happy with whichever one you decide to purchase. But Blackstone is going to give you more versatility in terms of features and different things that you can do with different cookers that they offer. Some of them have lots of different features and, you know, combination style cookers. So do your homework, figure out which one works best for you. Just know that I would endorse either one of these two brands based on my personal experience with these cookers. That may not be what you want to hear. You may have wanted me to guide you in one direction or the other, but to be honest, it's best to do your homework, and it's going to come down to how much cooking space do you need and how much do you want to pay. And at the end of the day, it's going to be your choice. If you have questions for me, if there's things that you want to know specifically, post it down in the comments. Email me at, I think it's everydayfamilybbq@gmail.com. I always try to get back to people. I always try to respond to comments, and I'll do everything I can to help you understand the difference between these two if you have specific questions that I didn't address, and help you make a purchasing decision. But listen, this is probably going to be a long video. I got to get all these lights turned off, all these cameras back inside. It's starting to get cold. And I'm going to take my wife to lunch. I can't wait to do that. So I hope you got something out of this video. I really appreciate your support. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. All those things help me, and I really appreciate it. And I do have a membership section open now if you want to support me that way. Take care. Till next time, I'll see you on the next episode.